I don't even know where to start. I guess I could start with the intro. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where I cover nostalgic, obscure, otherwise strange content. If you've been here before, you know that my quest to cover and catalog and talk about all of these obscure, weird content, it usually takes me to the past, and that's why nostalgia is also a big part of this channel. But sometimes the weirdness comes right to your own day and age, and then you just have to figure out what to do about it. Number one. Okay, let me begin at the beginning and try really hard not to confuse everybody because I'm so far down the rabbit hole at this point. There's this church in Texas who decided to put on their own unauthorized performance of Hamilton and change a bunch of the beats and plot points and things and like add God into the storyline. Like they preserve a lot of the Hamilton structure, and you know, for the first like bit, if you didn't know it was put on by a church, you might not think it was. It just kind of seems like a community theater project, but then like they start ramping up the Jesus-ness the further and further you go into it before it's just completely a thing about accepting Christianity. And this was clearly one of those things that churches do to, you know, get new people in the door. Like I think the pastor in the very interesting sermon that he gave at the end, he says something about like, oh, we have all these visitors here. It was clearly something where it was like, oh, bring your friends and we're gonna like evangelize, you know? The poor family and friends that must have just gone in thinking that they were gonna get to see a version of Hamilton and then got what they got, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And before I go any further, speaking of getting ahead of myself, do not bother anybody who I'm about to talk about as far as being involved in this production and this church. Do not harass them, do not message them, do not reach out to them. If I find out that you did, I will block you. I will yeet you into the shadow realm, do you understand? Do not make me turn this van around, especially the younger cast members. Like, I can't guess their age by just looking at them, but I would assume that some of these actors are still in high school. And they've been getting a lot of hate online because of the cringiness of this, you know, and there are some places in this that are objectively funny, and I will, like, we'll get there. But I'm not here to pile on to the dunking on of these kids, right? This isn't about them. This isn't even about their church. This is about something much bigger. And yes, warning, we're going to talk about Avery's religious trauma today. Oh yeah, trigger warnings. Trigger warnings for religious trauma, homophobia, self-unaliving, I think. I'm just trying to cover all the bases. There might be things that I missed. There's two halves of me, right? There's this half of me that's looking at this as someone who's able to kind of see the natural comedy in things, right? You can see that this is very silly. It's very like, oh my god, why? Like, no one asked for this kind of thing. It's a big meme, and I'm not here to say that it's not. But there's this other part of me that, while watching this entire thing, because yes, I did watch the entire 2 hour and 17 minutes. Well, I didn't watch all of the pastor's sermon because it stressed me out, but like, I couldn't help but be taken back to a time in my life when I was a high schooler, very raised in a Christian bubble, very passionate about what the church was doing because I was taught to believe that that's basically how you serve the community, and I've always wanted to just make the world a little bit better than I found it, as I think most people do. And anybody who knows me now knows that I have a huge problem and really always did kind of grapple with the idea of evangelism and shoving religion down people's throats, even back then, but now I'm very, very against it. I think there's a lot of things morally wrong with doing that. I think it can be disrespectful in most cases to do something like that. And also, this church made it homophobic. Did I say that yet? They made it homophobic. You know, the Hamilton play, the play about like diversity and like how impactful it has been to the Broadway community in general. Yeah, they made it homophobic. But that's more on the behalf of the pastor that came out and spoke after. But again, we'll get there. I've got some choice thoughts for the adults that let this happen for a couple of reasons, but not for the younger actors in the play, because while it in no way excuses this, because what they did upsets me and offends me, there is a part of me that remembers being in their shoes. I know that the teenagers who worked on this do not know why what they did is so upsetting to so many people. And on the off chance that any of them were to see this video, I would just like to say directly to them, I don't think you're a bad person. I don't blame you. I know that you worked really hard in earnestness on something that you believed in, and I hope that you continue acting and pursuing musical careers and things like that, because I know that you're getting a lot of hate online right now for just the play that you were in being kind of a train wreck, but I can see that there's a lot of raw talent, right? And I hope that all of this doesn't scare you out of following your dreams. Now, with all that being said, and yes, I know this is going to be a very long video, let's turn our attention now to the people I actually have a bone to pick with, which are the adults who allowed this to happen and then took no accountability. So the play that we're about to watch was filmed and live streamed from the Dorr McAllen Church in Texas. This church has a history of taking well-established either plays or movies and kind of turning them into tools for Christian propaganda. And again, I'm not singling this church out. Pretty much every evangelical church does this, and I didn't realize that a lot of people who didn't get raised in the church just now found out about it through this Scamilton thing. Some of you might have seen Jenny Nicholson's really great hour-and-a-half video on a different church that every year does an Easter play based on some famous movie, TV show, etc. My church, while we never had this big of a production, we definitely did stuff similar to this. I remember we had a Saturday Night Live ripoff style improv skit that we would put on like once a month. The high schoolers would put it on for the Sunday schoolers, because the high schoolers met on Sunday nights, because we were super cool and way cooler than the kids that went to Sunday school in the mornings. And then we're encouraged to help out in like Sunday school and stuff like that as like leaders or helpers or whatever in the mornings. Some kids who were more interested in performing were on this basically improv troupe where they did Christian skits that were like supposed to be like Saturday Night Live skits, but they taught you about God, which is a weird mashup because it's like, if you've ever watched anything like Saturday Night Live or any kind of improv skit, the takeaway is usually not, look at how cool the thing we're making fun of is. Like, you can't really make a big joke about something and then also make it an educational ad for that thing. But anyway, I might just be salty because I remember wanting to be in this improv crew and and they had us all send in applications, and mine must have just like gotten thrown out in the trash because like I never heard anything back. The organizers just pretended not to know anything about anything, and then one day they were just like, oh, we've picked our new team. So I don't know. God, that's got to be the only thing more embarrassing than saying that I was on a Christian improv team. Oh my God. My point is, this is a bigger problem than just this one church that's getting shit on, right? Churches love to steal things from popular media and then try to make it worse to make you want to go to church. This church in particular is very, very guilty of this. The church that put on Scamilton, as it's being called amongst my corner of TikTok. Up until last week, this church had a very prevalent social media presence. Like I said, this play and all of their other plays were live streamed from their church. It looked like they live streamed all of their sermons and all of that stuff, and they were really, really active on their YouTube channel, which has more subscribers than my channel has right now, which hurts a little bit. And it's also worth noting that in the aftermath of the Scamilton controversy, they have pulled pretty much everything down off of all of their social medias. Not just this play, and not just their other plays in general, but like everything, every sermon, everything. Which is strange to me just from a YouTuber's perspective, because it's like, they're obviously doing this because they have offended a lot of people, and now they don't want to have to answer to any of those people who are now going to flood their socials with questions about why. You know, we all have the question of why. But it's strange because it's like they probably do have a church community that genuinely was like in the middle of like a sermon. Like, can you imagine if you were like trying to go through like a spiritual Bible study or something and then it all got yoinked off the internet while you were like part 3 of 6? Pastors always have these long ass sermon series. You never like can follow them at once. It's like a 6-week to 8-week ordeal. Like, just private the comments. Am I saying that because I really desperately wish that I could see more than just the Hamilton production that you did and the Greatest Showman production. I haven't watched that one yet, but that was the only other one I could find. But they've done a lot of these. They did, according to an archived screenshot of their website, they had done Despicable Me, Elf, and the one that I am determined to find, because I would love to find any of these. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, saved any of these things, anyone knows where I could find them, please let me know, because I would very wholeheartedly like to see more of these. I'm afraid most of them might just be lost to time, at least for the time being. But the one that I'm determined that I can find, because I know copies of it exist somewhere, I just can't find any posted publicly online, is their Beauty and the Beast production. Because, oh my god, we all know how I feel about Beauty and the Beast. I need to see this, and I need to make a video about this. A version where the Beast doesn't get saved by Belle loving him, but gets saved by Jesus? Are you kidding me?
Hey guys, it's, oh my god, I need my tea, hang on.
It's a couple days later, and I have been doing some more digging on the church. But I found a little bit more than I was maybe signing up to find. According to what I'm seeing online, the Dorr McAllen Church is affiliated with something called the Potter's House Christian Fellowship, also known as the CFN, the Christian Fellowship Network. And it's more of a rabbit hole than I thought I had already gone down. Basically, the network can be traced back to a church that was founded in the 70s in Arizona, and they have a lot of controversies under their belts. It's all alleged, obviously. I'm not a reporter. I'm barely even a YouTuber. This is so above my pay grade. But I wanted to talk about this because I haven't seen anybody else bring this up. The most bizarre thing to me is that the head church in this whole group also has put on a bunch of illegal plays, and they have not wiped their YouTube channel yet. Their YouTube channel hasn't been active for about a year. Live on their channel is their interpretation of The Amazing Spider-Man and something called Malice in Wonderland. I have no idea what either of those things are, but I'm learning from the mistakes of our past with potentially losing the Despicable Me and Elf plays of the Dorr McAllen Church, and I downloaded these plays as soon as I saw them. But yeah, like, am I going crazy? What did I stumble onto? I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to make a funny YouTube video.
So anyway, yeah, the church advertised for this. I'm pretty sure TikTok knew this was happening a little bit before it actually happened. And then they did their first of what was supposed to be 2 performances in a row. After they did the first performance, that was when the Hamilton legal team found out. Because before that, it was very clear that Lin-Manuel Miranda and his lawyers had no idea this was happening, because again, they streamed the entire thing on YouTube, even lifting the backing tracks from the actual show, and it did not get pulled down. I was streaming the other night and I watched an old Smosh video on stream from 2006 and I got yeeted off my own stream for like a minute. What do you mean they didn't get taken down? But they didn't. They got through the whole thing. And then the next day, because the internet had found out that this had happened, that's when Lin-Manuel Miranda put out a statement on Twitter saying, "Thank you guys for letting me know. I've got my lawyers involved, whatever." Then the church put out a public statement saying that they were canceling the second show. But then they sent out an email to their newsletter recipients, not predicting that people who were just there to hate watch their Hamilton play were also on the mailing list. They sent an email that said, "Hey, we said we were going to cancel it, but like not really, we're just not going to live stream it." And it turned out later on that I guess they had been given the okay by the Hamilton team to do their second performance because there were younger people who worked really hard on this, and they didn't want to spoil the fun. They just asked them not to put it on the internet. But then there's also like this thing where apparently the Hamilton team didn't know the homophobic messaging and the problematic stuff, the fact that they basically changed a bunch of the show to be Christianized, which like, did none of the lawyers, like, I know it's a 2-hour performance, but watch it on 2x speed, guys. That's what I do. You didn't watch it before you told them they could do the second performance? What do you mean? How did you not know this was happening before? Why did people on Twitter have to be the bearers of this information? And I didn't know that much about the ethics or laws surrounding putting on productions of plays. I've had a very interesting crash course on it and doing a lot of research for this video. But for those who don't know, like I didn't know until like 2 days ago, you can't put on a performance unless you can get a license to put on that specific play. And not every play offers a license because they don't want to dissuade people from going and seeing it on Broadway or on tour. And so Hamilton is one of those shows. It's still new enough. They're not allowing licenses to anyone for any reason to perform it. And if they did, they wouldn't allow them to change it to make it about God. However, even from the pulpit, lying is apparently something that it's very easy to do, because then that didn't stop the following Sunday morning their pastor from making a statement.
So we would like to once again thank the Hamilton team for giving us the license to perform our version of Hamilton.
In which he lied, in which he said that they had permission to do it, which is not a thing that's possible because they couldn't have gotten a license because licenses are not available. So we've got stealing and we've got lying. Aren't those both commandments? I don't know, maybe they're trying to get bingo. And since then, this church has been radio silent. They've said nothing. I'm sure that they're still preaching to the people that go to their church in person. I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of having a pity party for themselves, because I know from being in the church atmosphere that there's a big us against them mentality a lot of time. There's a big, again, not saying that that's what this church does, but churches in general, every church that I've ever been to, there's a big thing with like, you need to be like Jesus, who was not of the world. So the more criticism you get, the more you're actually being like Jesus, because the world hates you because you're so different and so unique, and they just don't understand. There's a lot of that, and I would not be surprised if the church is using this internally as a chance to spread that kind of messaging because of the amount of trolling and bullying that has happened so far. And that's really why we're here, because as somebody who's been there, I want to just go through this play, look at it with you guys, and just review it like we review everything else. Because in the Christian community, there's a big belief that people reject Christian media because they hate Christians. And it's not that. It's that oftentimes Christian media is unoriginal and offensive, just like this production. So yeah, I know this is more of like a deep dive than I usually do. I promise it's still gonna be a fun video, but buckle up because it's gonna be a tough ride. Oh, and this goes without saying too, but you know, this is not directed at every individual Christian person. There's a lot of Christian people in my life. There's a lot of Christian people I think that are on this channel who are absolutely lovely people, who are not bigoted, are not just going around screaming at everybody to join their church. And I know for those of you who are out there watching this that you're very embarrassed about this, because I also remember being very embarrassed by every other Christian I saw. Sometimes it felt like. One of the things that inspired me to leave the church was because I could no longer excuse some of the terrible things that I saw the church doing in my own personal experience. But that's a whole different story. Scamilton made me leave the church. That would be a title, wouldn't it? That'd sure get the hate clicks. Oh, did it get taken off of you? I think the second re-upload of this thing got taken down. Well, thankfully, I saved a copy of it to my computer. Saved it the second I saw it. So yeah, if the clips seem shorter in this video than they usually are in some of my other videos, I try to only use what I absolutely need because, you know, fair use policy. But just because this is an active thing and we don't usually deal with that, you might see some short clips. That's why. Your girl doesn't need her own video yoinked.
I'd like to make a few proclamations. Beths Kitchen, which is right here to my left, which will be to your right, is going to be open throughout the entire play.
So I could talk about right off the bat the fact that he mentioned that there was a concession something open, which I first gave them the benefit of the doubt, saying maybe they were just, you know, providing food, not selling food, but apparently reports are coming out that they were indeed selling food and merch too. So this is a different layer of legality that.
And go buy something from Beths Kitchen.
I'm not knowledgeable enough. Somebody call Emily D. Baker.
Please respect all these wishes and proclamations and enjoy the show.
The thing that I find so interesting though, and absolutely no hate to this person, but I find it funny because they have this actor playing the king do the announcements like he does in the Broadway show. That's how deep the similarities are. But also, this guy just seems so nervous. Like, if you've ever seen Jonathan Groff or anybody else playing the king doing these announcements, they're having fun with it, pretty much using it as a chance to, like, showcase that character's personality and be very snarky. And this guy is so nervous.
The $10 founding father without a father.
The show opens with a pretty much unchanged musical number, although the audio team was probably doing the best they could, but like, come on. Don't do the cast dirty like that. You can't even hear the first half of his line.
World's gonna know your name. What's your name? Alexander Hamilton.
Like, the kid that plays Burr and the kid that plays Hamilton specifically, there were moments in this play where they genuinely impressed me. In the chaos, there was like an eye, in the eye of the hurricane, if you will.
He would have been dead, destitute without a cent of restitution.
You can tell there's raw talent. I just feel bad, you know?
Just you wait.
Yeah, so aside from it just kind of being a little bit shaky, you might not know that this is Christian themed just yet.
Me, I'm the darn fool that shot him.
First deviations start to come in the second song.
He handles the financials. He punched the bursar. Yes.
See, I was expecting them to do things like cut out parts about Hamilton being physically violent, but they kept that in. What they did not keep in was the ambiguous references to sex. There's not a lot of, like, sexuality in Hamilton if you've never seen it, but there's lines like this where a character says, and God, I'm not going to rap because that would be an actual crime against humanity. But a character says it's hard to have intercourse over 4 sets of corsets. They changed that to, what did they change it to?
Up in 11, you both spine for the government.
Hey.
Lock up your secrets and horses. Of course, it's hard to keep them from me when I'm coming for your sources.
Right. Hard to keep them from me when I'm coming for your sources. Which also, I'm sure Lin-Manuel Miranda is very upset by basically something that he worked on for 7 whole years just to create and then originated the title character of being used in this manner for bigotry. But I'm sure he's also annoyed that they're messing with his flow like that, you know?
Meanwhile, Britain keeps messing with us endlessly.
Oh yeah, there's another line that says Britain keeps shitting on us endlessly. They changed it to messin' with because they weren't gonna say that in front of, like, the elders. You weren't gonna say that in front of your grandparents and all your grandparents' friends.
I don't have no gun to brandish. I walk the streets famished.
Yeah, like, they definitely leave in the characters casually talking about violence, which I'm not saying they should take out. The characters are talking about fighting for freedom, but it's just interesting the further it goes on, the things that they keep and the things that they cut. And I'll get more into it. We got a lot more show to get through. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. The way they sang, they sounded so dejected. I felt sad for them.
We roll like Moses, claiming a promised land.
You know, the pastor loved that they just had that tidbit in there about Moses and the promised land. They didn't have to put that in. Which, by the way, also, there are religious references and imagery in Hamilton. Like, it's not like we'll get into it, but it's just strange. Okay, now we get to the Schuyler sisters. God, I just realized that I'm not perfectly, like, summarizing the story yet. So basically, we're just in the beginning of the story. Alexander Hamilton immigrates to the New World and makes friends and ends up getting involved with the people fighting for America's freedom. You're caught up. Now we get to the scene where we're introduced to the Schuyler sisters, which is Hamilton's future wife and her 2 sisters. And before anybody says it, I know it's going to be in the comments, so that's why I'm addressing it. It does look like at least one of the Schuyler sisters is played by a white actress. You can't tell somebody's ethnicity just by looking at them, but I have no opinion on that personally because, you know, obviously, I hope nobody's coming to me for any advice at all, but definitely not something relating to this subject. Happening in New York! But I know that ethnicity, when it comes to casting for Hamilton, is a debated subject in the community. I'll defer to somebody more knowledgeable. Gonna let that one slide and just focus on the other things.
And when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'ma compel him to include women in the sequel. Work!
So this is a sad thing. And again, I'm sure some of you go to progressive churches. Hashtag not all Christians, I guess. I was genuinely wondering if they were gonna cut out the line about including women in the sequel because all the churches that I grew up going to were very touchy when it came to women's rights and women in leadership. In fact, we were specifically told we were not allowed to obviously preach or baptize, which I remember making me upset because I wanted either my mom or my breakout group leader to baptize me when I got baptized at 16. That's not allowed. But we're also just not allowed to teach or like lead any group in any capacity unless the group is solely other women, because at least my church taught that like women can have leadership over other women but not men, because men are above women, which is fucked up, and I just want to say that. But good for them, they kept it in. I don't think my church would have kept it in. I also feel bad because there's several technical glitches with like the sound and stuff in this show. I'm genuinely curious to know if the singers could hear themselves while they were singing at all, because you can hear that they can sing, but like there's a lot of missed notes and things, and now it's going viral on the internet, and I feel, again, I'm just gonna keep saying it, I feel bad.
You say, price of my love's not a price that you're willing to pay.
Now we get to one of my favorite scenes. The king comes back.
You'll be back, soon you'll see.
People have pointed out online that he appears to be chewing gum while he's performing, which I would have assumed without any theater knowledge was a no-no, but apparently the theater community is backing up my gut impulse. It's very, very much so not something you're supposed to do.
It's much harder when it's on your gum.
He also gets to this one part where he accidentally sings a line from the reprise that he's supposed to sing in a few scenes from now, and then realizes, and then psychs himself out and just stops singing until he gets to the next part of the song.
Defend a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love.
I also think it goes over this church's and most other churches' heads, and maybe this is just me, but there's a very easy parallel to make between King George and the way non-Christian people feel about God, right?
And no, don't change the subject, 'cause you're my favorite subject.
Like, the idea that you have to be a Christian to be a person who's not going to be sent to hell oftentimes gives off the energy of a my way or the highway parental figure, right? And this is kind of the way that King George is.
I will kill your friends and family to remind you of my love.
He's like, I love you so much that I'm gonna fuck up your life and try to kill all of you if you don't come back and be subservient to England. Do you see? Not saying that that's, I'm just saying there's an irony that I don't think they understand.
Da, 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 da.
I do like his little shoulder movement though.
Here he comes.
So then we get to Washington's introduction song.
Close the can and watch the blood and the guts spray and
Yes, it's very funny that they changed the word shit for guts as if that's less weird, because like, sure, guts doesn't have any stigma of being a swear word, but like, it's still like a bodily function that's gross, and the idea of, you're saying the idea of guts coming out of somebody is less gross than shit. But I'm gonna say right up front, Washington is very well cast.
Burr,
Sir,
close the door on your way out.
The guy who's playing him here obviously doesn't have the same experience in stage that Christopher Jackson, who originated the role of Washington in Hamilton, did, but like, he's really well cast. He's not bad.
Dying is easy, young man. Living is harder.
Like, he manages to keep a lot of the same like posture and air of Washington that you see in the actual productions, the ones that aren't stolen. So yeah, by the end of this song, Hamilton is the right-hand man of Washington. He's moving up in the ranks. As the story progresses, we now see the song Helpless, which is the story of Hamilton meeting and proposing to his wife, Eliza.
And I'm helpless, down for the count, and I'm drowning in them.
They're struggling so hard to harmonize. I don't think they can hear themselves, much less each other.
Laughing at my sister cause she wants to form a harem. I'm just saying, if you really love me, you would share 'em. Ha!
Like, they left the reference to harem in there? Is it... Like, I understand that real harems are not, like, a sexualized thing, but, like, in popular media in America, they are misconstrued to be that way, and I think that's the reference that this song is making, so, like, I'm a little surprised that they kept that in there. Maybe the choir director just doesn't know what harem means. The little dance moves, though. Actually, I like this because in the original, when Hamilton's buddy is tossing the petals at his wedding, it's like played for laugh. The way that it's played here, it just seems like he's just annoyed to be there, and he just kind of like on his way out, he's just like, all right, whatever, you can have some flower petals. We now get the song Satisfied, which is the song where we learn, uh-oh, even though Hamilton married the one sister, the other sister was actually in love with him first. They just lifted the backing tracks and some of the baked-in vocals from that.
Skylar.
My sister. Number 2.
They also, like, in the original version, Angelica is putting up a better front, right? And she's, you know, the whole point of this song is like she's not showing Alexander and Eliza what she actually feels because she doesn't want to kind of ruin it for them, and she's being a big sister. In this version, she's so openly upset at the idea of her sister getting with Alexander that it just makes Alexander and her sister Eliza look really mean, like they just do not pay attention to her at all.
But when I fantasize at night, it's Alexander's eyes.
Again, that has an implication that I don't think they fully registered when they kept it into the Christian play, but maybe I'm just broken. I don't like it on a whole different level because it's like, because a lot of these actors are young, like you've now broadcast to everybody them saying innuendos, and you know, it's just the grumbling off stage. Okay, so next we get the song Wait For It, which is probably my favorite song in the whole show. This is Aaron Burr's song where you really start to feel some sympathy for him. We also learn that he is dating a married woman, which I believe actually happened.
She's married. She's married to a British officer.
Oh, shit.
But it's interesting because they cut the prelude to this song, I assume because there's some swearing and direct admission that his girlfriend is married to somebody else, but like they keep in the actual song, they don't change up the line where he says he's sleeping with her while her husband's gone.
I'm keeping her bed warm while her husband is away.
So like, why? Was it just for time? Like, I'm confused.
And if there's a reason he seems to thrive and so few survivors, gosh darn it, I'm willing to wait for it.
Gosh darn it. He embodies, I can tell that he's so nervous, but this actor, he's embodying like Aaron Burr's formality and like that part of his personality that's a stickler for the rules really well, honestly.
Lead you yield. You shot him in the side, yes he yields.
They then cut out the 10 dual commandments. It must have been because the elders or like whoever was in charge of overseeing this didn't like the idea of referring to anything as the 10 commandments that weren't the commandments, but as we agreed earlier, this church has broken at least 2 of the commandments by this whole ordeal. But also, like, if the whole point of the show is to show, like, Alexander Hamilton's life would have been better if he knew God sooner, wouldn't you want to keep them in? Right? It's like, oh, Alexander Hamilton is committing blasphemy, and then his life goes downhill.
Go home, Alexander.
They do keep the end part, though, because it's pretty important to the story. It's the part where Alexander Hamilton gets sent home from the war because Washington's like, you fucked up, go home, and then he's, like, on the bench. And Alexander's like, why?
I begged him to send you home.
You should have told me.
I'm not sorry.
And then he goes home and he finds out that his wife is pregnant. This is where the first really blatant Christian-y change comes in. See if you can spot it.
But I'm not afraid. My hope is in Jesus. If you could just give him a chance today.
Did you catch it? This scene that's supposed to be about a couple where the wife is just like, you're enough. You don't have to like go and die in a war for your life to mean anything. You can be a good parent and a good husband, and that's enough. They changed it and now it's just like, love God and the war will win itself or something. I don't know.
Watch me engaging them, escaping them, and erasing them.
The actor who plays Lafayette also is bringing the energy to the role. I feel for him because that rap, I'm pretty sure, is like a Guinness World Record fastest rap. It's very complicated. This is a very hard play to hand off to people who are not like super prepared for it.
If you join us right now, together we could turn the tide. Oh,
You got it, man. I believe in you.
we have no control.
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
Yes, as Lin-Manuel Miranda just found out this weekend, you do not have control over who tells your story, apparently.
Hercules fall again. I need no introduction with enough beats, and I'll put myself back up.
This is another one where I was just like, ooh, how are they gonna change this? Because the line originally is, when you knock me down, I get the fuck back up again, and then there's something about, like, we're in the shit now, somebody's gotta shovel it.
So that's what happens when he up against the ruffians. We in this mess now, somebody gotta shovel it.
Alright, I will give them this. It at least makes sense where some of the other changes don't.
Cheat with the French, now I'm fighting with France and with Spain.
Then we have the reprise of You'll Be Back. Again, they had enough of like a budget to get this stage, and they have lighting. In the original version when he says, I'm so blue, he stamps his foot in this like melodramatic way and the spotlight turns blue on him, and it's like, it gets a big laugh every time. I don't know why they didn't spring for that for my friend here. But they didn't, and they kept like the foot stamp, but then like nothing happens, and it just makes me sad. They also cut out the whole scene, which is one of the most wholesome, where it's like the parallel between Burr and Hamilton as they both like have their first kid and they like understand finally what it means to be a parent. And then also at the end of that scene, we find out that Lawrence, rest in peace, died trying to free slaves, so it's like the saddest part of the scene. We find out that like one of the best characters is gone, and these other two characters are having this very emotional, impactful moment. They skip over that. Just who needs family in this play about religion? They also cut out parts of the song, like they cut out anything that alludes to, in the show they allude to the fact that while Eliza's sister and Hamilton never like had an affair, they definitely like had a thing for each other. They tend to remove anything, like there's a part in the original where like they're writing letters back and forth and they're like old-timey sliding into the DMs kind of, but they cut that part out, which makes other parts not make sense going forward. Now Thomas Jefferson shows up.
So what did I miss?
They did do a pretty good job with the costumes. I will give them that. That coat, especially, they did a good job with the Jefferson costume.
Are you ready for a cabinet meeting?
All right, now we get a cabinet meeting scene, which is a rap battle. Hamilton and Jefferson are rivals. They hate each other.
Doing whatever the heck it is you do in Monticello.
Whatever you do in Monticello is another reference that they did not understand. I'm pretty sure that's meant to talk about him doing drugs, but you know.
Sitting there useless, my shoe fits.
They didn't say two shits. I understand that. You are at a church.
Turn around, it's over, or I will leave your mouth toothless.
Turn around, it's over, I'll leave your mouth toothless. So the original line is turn around, bend over, I'll show you where my shoe fits, which like risky for church, but like what they gave us doesn't make sense. Well, it does, but it just doesn't flow.
Dad, look, my name is Philip. I am a poet.
This is always one of my favorite scenes because it's just kind of like a silly family moment for the Hamilton family. Also, I will give this actress credit. She's been getting a lot of slack online, but she is doing the beatboxing, I think, so good for her. Oh yeah, and that's another thing. Because they cut out 10 Dual Commandments, there's a direct parallel between that and like his son learning to play piano, so it's like the harsh war and like him being a family man. They cut it anyway.
I'm afraid I cannot join you upstate.
Alexander, I came all this way. All this way, take a break.
Angelica being this mad at him for not going on break with them doesn't make sense because they cut out all of the, shall we say, tension between the two of them. Which is weird because now you're gonna see we get into
There's trouble in the air, you can smell it.
Say No to This, which is the song where Hamilton cheats on his wife with a different person. They didn't cut out the fact that he was cheating.
But her hand is on mine and I don't say no.
Her hand is on mine instead of her mouth is on mine, because, you know, that would be too risky. But the idea of them kissing while they're cheating is apparently where the line is.
Say no to this. No.
Also, they cut out the second half of the scene and they just go off stage, where, again, I wouldn't want minors performing the original scene, but you could have just had non-minors do. Well, you shouldn't have done the whole thing anyway. Let's just get that out of the way.
For yet in their hour of need, you forget.
We also get the song Washington on Your Side. They cut out, by the way, Room Where It Happens, which I don't know why because it's one of my favorite songs. It's about political corruption. Did a church not want to talk about political corruption? I mean, there already are, because that's what this play is about, essentially.
Southern Democratic Republicans!
Also, they cut out the line, motherfucking Democratic Republicans, for obvious reasons, but they didn't bother to put anything in its place. They just, like, stop.
Democratic Republicans!
And then keep going, which just draws your attention to the fact that they probably swore in the original.
One last time.
We get One Last Time, which is the song where Washington retires. It's implied that he's gonna die soon. We're supposed to feel bad, even though the real Washington was a terrible person.
You could continue to serve.
One last time.
And I do not think they can hear themselves because they are struggling hard here.
An upright to you.
Faults
Faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned.
There's also this part where Hamilton's reading the letter that he wrote on behalf of Washington, and he's reading it while Washington is singing it, and
The reward is I trust.
for
Mutual care.
One last time.
it seems like they're struggling to do that and not trip over each other.
How does Hamilton, the short-tempered protean creator of the Coast Guard...
Oh yeah, that was the big change to the first number. I know I said the first number doesn't change that much.
How does the scoundrel, orphan, son of a harlot and a Scotsman...
They did change how does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore, and a Scotsman, which, by the way, off topic, this has nothing to do with them, this is just even to the original. Doesn't it make it sound like Scotsman is like a negative trait? Like, I know it's there because it flows and it's great, it's a great line, but it's just always made me laugh a little bit whenever they're like, a bastard, orphan, son of a whore, and a Scotsman. It's like, Jesus, what did Scotland do to you? Anyway, they changed that because they didn't want to say any of that in church.
How does the scoundrel, orphan...
This does feel very similar to like the Kids Bop-ifying of things, you know?
Immigrant embezzling our government funds.
I can almost see the headline, your career is done.
There's also this line in the same vein where like, so this scene is about Hamilton getting caught for what his rivals think is him embezzling money. But he's like, oh no, that's okay. I'm not embezzling money. I've just been cheating on my wife for a while. And so he shows them this letter that's a letter of extortion from the girl that he's been seeing. Her husband is like extorting him, which we would know and would not be as confusing if they had kept that part of the play in, but they cut out the entire second half of Say No to This, we learn all of this. Which is kind of important because the lady he's cheating with and her husband are the Reynoldses, and that's why he initially pens the Reynolds pamphlet, so they tried to do that without the Reynolds. I just said that so many times I thought I was gonna summon Ryan Reynolds and just be like, oh my god, Detective Pokemon.
You see, that was my wife I saw you with. Wow. Look.
Oh, and also the original line is, you see, that was my wife, you decided to, what? And then they like cut him off. They don't even say it, but like they weren't going to say even the illusion of it, so I think it's funny the way that they put a band-aid over that.
The Reynolds pamphlet.
They also cut out the scene Hurricane, which is, again, very interesting to me for the same reason that them cutting out 10 Dual Commandments was, because I'm sure they did it for, like, religious reasons, because there's a line, it's basically Hamilton deciding that he's going to write the Reynolds pamphlet and confess publicly to the entire affair. And he thinks that's gonna be the best way forward. It's just being, like, brutally honest. There's a line when he says, and when my prayers to God were met with indifference, I picked up a pen, I wrote my own deliverance, which is the, like, coolest bar. Like, that's one of the best lines in the whole show, by the way. I know they cut it out because they're a church and they didn't want to even tread into those waters, but again, the whole point is that Hamilton's life is falling apart because he's sinning, right? So like, wouldn't that be a great way to just illustrate that for people? Like, you didn't take God seriously and then your life went to hell? Or maybe it's because a church just doesn't want to face at all the notion of God letting bad things happen to people because it's something that few people have an answer to.
I will choose their happiness over mine every time.
Okay, rapid fire. This part doesn't make any sense because they've cut all of their relationship drama out. Not that there was a ton, but like they cut it out, so it kind of doesn't make sense that they have a connection at all.
I saved every letter you wrote to me.
We now see Burn from Eliza. This is obviously the song that best suits this actress's voice. She gets to have a little bit of a moment.
You forfeit all rights to my heart. You forfeit the place in our bed. You'll sleep in your office instead.
Okay.
Only no memories of when you were mine.
Okay, I get it. It's a just don't blow out the mic. I can hear the mic popping. You're doing great. Also, they've got an actual bucket that she's lighting these papers and burning them in. I was wondering if they were going to let a young person play with fire on the church stage, but they did. They doubled down.
I hope that you
Yeah, you get him, girl. You tell him. Ooh, either they missed the lighting cue or somebody stepped on the lighting cue because the next character started coming out for a scene transition and the lights hadn't gone down yet. Oh well, that's a minor thing.
The scholars say I got the same virtuosity and brains in my pops. The ladies say my shot is just the same as my pops.
Okay. The ladies say... Wait, what is the actual line now?
The ladies say my brain's not where the resemblance stops.
I said I wasn't gonna rap it. After some of the other things that they kept, it's so weird to change that, because, like, that could just mean, ooh, the ladies think he's cute. Like, you're gonna keep the Monticello reference, but this gets to get cut?
The ladies say my shot is just the same as my pops.
You didn't even rhyme it with anything else. You rhymed pops with pops. Again, this kid's doing great. It's not criticism not towards him, just, you know.
Lady I'm looking for, Mr. George Acre.
I saw him just up Broadway, couple of blocks, he was going to see a play.
This character says piss off, so how are they gonna change it?
George! George!
Oh, I thought I was the one being shushed.
I know where to find you. Buzz off. I'm watching the show now.
Buzz off. Okay, that's a pretty easy and blatant adjustment. It's right there, you know?
See, where is this happening? Across the river in Jersey.
Everything is legal in New Jersey. Shout out to anybody watching from New Jersey. I see you. Yeah, so this is the scene where Hamilton's son is like, you disrespected my family. I'm gonna shoot you. Because that's what they did back then. It was a weird time in history.
When the time comes, fire your weapon in the air. It's to put an end to the whole affair.
And Hamilton doesn't give the advice to, well, I mean, I know it was seen as like cowardice, but like, he's like, just aim your gun at the sky. The kid's probably a nice kid. He will also aim his gun at the sky and you'll both be fine. I probably don't need to tell you that that's not what happens.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Father of the year, it's Hamilton. Oh yeah, and the kid that shoots him just turns on his heel and leaves just cold as ice. That's a thing from the original play too, I'm sure. I just think it's funny.
The bullet entered above his hip and it's lodged in his right arm.
Oh god. Ugh. I never want to fathom how that's possible. The geography of that shot is a lot.
I've done all that I can, but the wound was infected when he arrived.
Yeah, they weren't too good at medicine back then.
Stay alive.
Oh, his mom's not gonna be happy.
Is he breathing? Is he going to survive this?
Like the one time Hamilton talks to his kid and the kid ends up shot. Damn.
I would always change the life. We'd always change the life.
I know.
This scene is always rough. Oh! Ah! Fair. Honestly, fair. Her kid just died. That one's never easy to watch.
Mr. Hamilton.
And if we were watching regular Hamilton right now, we would be going straight into... My cat's yelling to get in the door. So if we were watching regular Hamilton, this would be the part where, shaken from watching the death of a beloved character, we'd go into It's Quiet Uptown, which is probably one of, if not the saddest songs in the whole show. Yeah, Perry, that's the one where Hamilton and his whole family have to deal with the loss of his son. And it sucks. Well, like, the song is good, but, like, you know, it's sad. But this is where we get the blatant Christian messaging. Not only is it offensively in your face, it just breaks up the flow of the show.
Stop running from God, Alexander.
That's the thing, I promised to actually review this like I review everything else, and like, this just is a bad move. Not just for it being like an issue on a bunch of different levels. This is just a bad place to add a scene. Oh, what scene is this? This is a scene where Hamilton is told that his son died because of his past sins, and then he repents and becomes a Christian.
We play a role in what happens to us in this life. It may be that the circumstances you now face are the consequences of decisions made in the past.
And he doesn't even get witnessed to by like a character that we know. It's not even like Lafayette rolls back up and is like, hey, you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? No, it's just a guy. He looks like a very nice guy, but it's not a guy that we as the audience really know.
Pray with me, sir. Receive Jesus Christ in your heart right now.
And Hamilton just changes his life because this guy tells him to.
I pray for Alexander. I pray that you bring him peace of mind.
Don't do this. I think most people know not to do this. Do not witness to a grieving person. I don't really like the idea of witnessing to anybody if they haven't like explicitly asked you for your religious takes. No, don't fight that. The worst time to witness to somebody is in a moment of grief, right? Because they're already in turmoil. They're just looking for some peace. You are, at best, well-intentioned with terrible timing. You are, at worst, trying to take advantage of a very terrible thing that just happened. Don't do it.
Amen.
Even when you have good intentions, I'm speaking directly to the people that might be watching this and thinking it's okay and writing me an angry comment right now. I know you mean well, but everybody gets upset and does not take it the way that you mean it. Just don't.
And only God can help us pull through.
Well, what about you? Did you do anything to help him? Guy with a Bible? Did you do anything other than just tell him all the ways that his life could be better?
We play a role in what happens to us in this life.
Definitely don't say that to somebody who just lost their child.
The good news is, you don't have to live regretting the past.
Feels like he's trying to sell him on a timeshare.
His word says.
I wonder if he's actually reading from that Bible or if he had that Bible verse memorized and he just kind of opened it to a random page.
Receive Jesus Christ in your heart right now.
That sounded more like a command instead of a question. I feel like he's really being disrespectful. Hamilton has said nothing. Hamilton is crying over the loss of his dead child. And this guy is like talking at him. Also, this guy is crying on command. Like you can see in certain shots he's getting tears out. Good for him. There's a lot of professional actors that can't do that.
You hold your child as tight as you can and push away the unimaginable.
Now we go into It's Quiet Uptown, which is weird too because now the song is about how much everything sucks, but he like just accepted Jesus. Isn't the whole point that they're trying to make that like everything's good? I think they just put it in here because this is where Hamilton's life stops like going into a nosedive and starts to kind of like stable back out. They didn't want us to think that it could have been anything other than religion. And some people's lives do stable out because of religion, and that's valid. I'm not trying to say it's not, it's just, it's weird to take this piece of art and try to shoehorn in a different message than what the artists intended. Like art is subjective and all that stuff. But you know what I mean? Like this blatantly shoehorning in something that wasn't there before, it was like, it's strange.
I take the children to church on Sunday, a sign of the cross at the door, and I pray. That never used to happen before.
And that's the thing too. That line was in the actual play. I feel like I'm mostly going to be talking in this video to people who know Hamilton, and I'm probably preaching to the choir. Pun not intended, but there you go. But for those of you who don't know, that line was in there. Sign of the cross at the door and I pray, that never used to happen before. That's a sweet line. That has religious messaging in it. They could have just done Hamilton, because there's already a message, like without even changing it. Lin-Manuel Miranda was like, I got you. He says that he's going to church now. Like, why did you have to put in this like clunky exposition? With this character that we don't know, I'm gonna name him Steve. I feel bad that everybody else gets a name and he doesn't.
He passes every day. They say he walks the length of the city.
They are not mixing the sound. I'm not an expert. I didn't like study sound engineering, but it's clear that some people's mics are too loud and some people's mics are not loud enough.
You knock me out, I fall apart.
That's a reprise from a song that they cut. It was the song that he sings to him when he's a baby in the crib, so if they kept that in, we'd all be crying. I'm trying hard not to cry right now. I'm a very emotional person and I cry easily. And by the way, the kid who's playing Hamilton, he's getting to me. That he's selling the sad vibes. If he ever sees this, I want him specifically to know that forget everything else aside, he is legitimately almost making me cry. So good for him.
But I'm not afraid. I know who I married.
Okay, that's funny too, because they changed her line in the original version of the song to say, I'm not afraid, my faith is in Jesus. He's not changing the line to say that he has faith in Jesus. In this version of the retelling, all she wanted was for him to become a Christian. And in their lowest moment, he's like, I'm still on the fence.
Forgiveness. Can you imagine?
Yeah, and there's like a whole like theme about like forgiveness and moving past somebody's mistakes. Is that not like the whole thing? I was in church for a long time. That's pretty much the whole thing. They could have just done the regular play and then the pastor could have come out and given a sermon about how like God forgives of sins the way that Eliza forgived her cheating husband. It's not a great analogy, but it's an analogy. Also, I think it's funny that the only sin they keep in is that of Hamilton's adultery, because apparently if he was like being blasphemous, that could never be forgiven probably, but she can look past the cheating a couple times, right?
They are going through the unimaginable.
I feel like I'm going through the unimaginable. I feel like I've been talking forever. Back in Washington, Aaron Burr is running for president against Thomas Jefferson. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but Thomas Jefferson wins. Okay, I can't hear anybody, and also...
And Jefferson in love with French.
I think this one character off to the left just forgot the second half of their line.
But you can grab a drink with him? Yes.
They also changed the word beer to drink, which doesn't rhyme anymore, but also, is there a different implication?
Mr. Hamilton.
Everybody seems tired in this scene. They all seem over it, and I don't blame them.
Mr. Hamilton.
Like, Hamilton's not really being swarmed by people asking for his political opinion. He's kind of just having people walk up to him and being like, meh? And he's like, meh? And they're like, eh. It's like an interaction you'd have in The Sims.
Jefferson has my vote.
Yeah, so Hamilton endorses Jefferson, Jefferson wins, Aaron Burr's pissed.
This wasn't planned. This wasn't planned.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this play. There's a lot of moments where the people in the play just look like they're not sure how or why they ended up there. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for them. And me, and all of you, honestly. This is one of those things that's just so egregious. I almost didn't cover it because I was like, you guys are nice people. Maybe I can spare you this one. But then I was just like, nope, we gotta talk about this one. It's too much.
As your vice president.
Yeah, side note, for the first couple of administrations, it used to be that the two candidates would run against each other, and then the loser would be the vice president to the president. Isn't that bizarre? That's a terrible way to work together. It's like you hate each other now. Now you have to work together? That's not gonna go well.
Orphan, scoundrel, a harlotson.
In the original, had they kept the original lines, he could have said, whore's son. That's the insult he throws his way. But they changed it to harlot. And he says harleton, which I could be wrong, but I don't think that's a word. You could have said charlatan. That would have kept the flow. And I would have been like, oh, that's a nice callback to how you used the word harlot back then. You know, in this wholesome Christian play. Sorry, backseat writing. I'll continue.
Sweet Jesus.
Hey.
They kept sweet Jesus. All right. Technically, that's taking the... Well, actually, no. The whole taking the Lord's name in vain isn't, like, a thing, right? Like, this is a huge misconception. The idea of, like, the Bible saying, like, oh, you can't take the Lord's name in vain, meaning you can't say God unless you're, like, being super reverent about it. That's not true. Taking the Lord's name in vain just means pretending to be a Christian when you're not. Ironic distinction, considering some of the Christians you've met in your life, isn't it? Sorry, no one wants to hear my Bible lessons.
Weehawken, Dawn, guns, John. You're on.
So then Hamilton and Burr are going to duel. This is the famous duel where, spoiler alert, Burr kills Hamilton. Which, by the way, you think politics are crazy now? They are, but like 1700s, 1800s politics in America? Wild. Imagine if you just woke up tomorrow morning and the headline was just like, Ted Cruz shot Nancy Pelosi. They shot him in a perfectly legal way. On to sports.
Come back to sleep.
This meeting's at dawn.
When she's allowed to sing in her own range, she has a very pretty voice.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, yeah, his microphone was way too loud, guys.
There were 10 things you need to know.
So this is a reprise of 10 Dual Commandments, which, if you remember from what feels like an afterlife and a half ago, they cut the original 10 Dual Commandments. So now, it makes no sense now, because we haven't heard it yet. I have, and probably a lot of you have, but like, if you've never seen Hamilton, this loses all of its meaning, because this is a reprise of a scene where Burr and Hamilton were the first to two guys who were dueling each other, and now they're dueling each other. No one shoots! Someone shoots this time.
They won't teach you this in your classes, but look it up. Hamilton was wearing his glasses.
This is something I've always asked myself since the first time I saw the show. If they're not teaching us in classes, how do we... Oh, it's because they don't actually teach us real history in school. Okay, I'm caught up.
This man will not make an orphan of my daughter.
A daughter that we haven't heard about yet in this version, because you cut out the scene where you sing to her. There was a song originally that they cut. Burr has to tell his daughter that his wife, her mom, died. Heartbreaking. Leslie Odom Jr. makes you cry every single time.
What is a legacy? It's knowing you repented and accepted the gospel of Jesus Christ that sets men free.
That's not the line. The line is, legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. I wrote some notes at the beginning of a song someone will sing for me. Yes, I know all of Hamilton by heart, try me. That's a beautiful line. But no, they had to take that line and ruin it.
Eyes up.
Okay, this is in the play.
I catch a glimpse of the other side.
This is in the play.
My God is watching from the other side.
That's not in the play. He says, Lawrence is on the other side. My son is on the other side. He's with my mother on the other side. He's seeing every person, including his best friend, his son, his mom, who died, who he cared about. And he's realizing that he can make peace with death. It's very sad.
Have I done enough so I can spend my time on the other side?
But God was probably also there too. I feel bad because there's some cool Christians that watch this channel and are in my family, and I'm not trying to say that any of that is wrong. That's all valid, as long as you're not like one of the people that uses it for bigotry. It's just, this is not the time and place to tell this message. This is not good. I don't like this.
He aims his pistol at the sky. Wait!
No, don't. And yeah, there was so much context in some of these songs that got cut about how, like, Burr being the one who's always waiting for the right time, Hamilton always being quick on his feet, and they both abandon their instincts at the same time, and then this happens. And like, yeah, we got some of that in there, but they cut out some other parts that made it better.
They say Angelica and Eliza were both out of sight when he died.
They cut out all the other stuff about his relationship with Angelica. So now it just makes Angelica look like a crazy, not even ex, just like an overbearing stalker. Weird.
Death doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints.
That is also interesting. They keep in the line, life, death, love doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints. Takes and it takes and it takes. Weird thing to be drawing people's attention back to if you're here to convert them. You know what I mean?
I survived, but I paid for it.
Oh, he's breaking my heart too. It's not their fault that the adults in their life put this on and let this happen. Like, it doesn't make it right, but it's not their fault.
The world was wide enough for both Hamilton and me.
And so now at the end of the play, Burr learns his lesson that he shouldn't be competing with others. He should understand that you can all have the space and the freedom to do exactly what you want with it. A lesson that none of the leaders of this church apparently grasp.
Jefferson!
I can't hear you, Jefferson. Yeet my boy a mic. His line was so funny, too.
But he doesn't get enough credit for all the credit that he's given us.
Like, Washington got to be heard for his pun. Real life Jefferson sucked. Play Jefferson is a lot of fun as a character. You didn't get to hear him. The more popular Hamilton becomes, it's kind of funny, that line, right? Every other person gets their story told. You just picture like all the other founding fathers looking up from hell being like, yeah, because somebody definitely wrote a whole 3-hour play that won multiple Tonys about our lives, right? Ben Franklin. God wiped away all my tears, grants me another 50 years. See, that's taking away all the agency that Eliza had. Because she's like, no, I worked through my grief. Like, that's an impressive thing. Letting your pain motivate you and channeling it into something. What? I don't know.
I interview every soldier who fought by your side.
She tells our story.
I try to make...
They sound so sad about it. Like, she didn't tell the story very well.
I stay relying on my faith. As long as I'm alive, I'll tell this story. Jesus gives me the strength to pull through. When I needed him most, he was right on time.
This whole line was about Angelica and how they relied on each other and how their sisterly bond got her through the dark. Why are you doing Angelica so dirty?
I raise funds in D.C. for the Washington Monument.
Instead of him being, like, right there, Washington just kind of yells, "She tells my story," from off screen, and it just... I don't know why it's funny. I can't isolate why it's funny, but it's funny to me.
I speak out against slavery.
By the way, again, not their fault, just more of a... I think about this every single time. Eliza says she raises funds in DC for the Washington Monument, and then she says she speaks out against slavery. The Washington Monument employed slave labor. Why have I never heard anybody bring this point up? It bothers me every time I listen to the song.
I established the first private orphanage in New York City.
This, right at the end, is the change that fascinated me the most. This change has caused me to lay awake in bed at night and think about this. She was supposed to say, I established the first private orphanage in New York City. I helped raise hundreds of children. I get to see them growing up. A beautiful sentiment. This is how they do it.
I introduce hundreds of children to Jesus as they're growing up.
Not only does that imply that she only cares about those kids for their potential to become Christians, and only that, but this is fascinating to me. This church saw the line, I helped raise hundreds of children, I get to see them growing up, and thought that that line wasn't Christian enough, so they had to change it. Isn't that fascinating? That's fascinating to me.
Although my life was short-lived.
Oh yeah, and then then Eliza gets man-spread off of her own ending, where this is usually the part where everybody's standing around like they're waiting in heaven to meet Eliza, and then like Hamilton like leads her through and she looks out into the audience like she's seeing literal heaven, paradise for the first time, and she has like this really like sweet gasp where she's just like so happy and she's like reunited with everybody that she knows. They just kick her off to the side to get one more Christian messaging in there.
Men still foolishly praise me.
Men still foolishly praise me. You just electively put on this play. That's gotta be what you mean when you say men foolishly praise me, right? Like, there's no, like, cult of Hamilton that I know of.
The choice is yours.
Yeah, the choice is everybody's. Like, if that's what you believe, that's wonderful and wholesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this just feels like a manipulative way to do it because it is everybody's individual choice. There's so many people in the church that genuinely sit around, I heard this all my life, wondering in earnest why more people don't go to church. They're convinced that they just like don't know about church or something. Like if they showed up once, they just like definitely keep coming back. Because it's been such a positive thing to them, they can't imagine it not being the same thing for somebody else. And the truth is, and it's a hard truth to accept, but the truth is, if people wanted to be in church, they would be. If people wanted to, they would. If he wanted to, he would. Apply that to God or people that potentially believe in God. It's so late. I'm so tired. So now at the end of this play, the pastor comes out, and this also bothers me. The pastor, because of the way that they formatted this, now comes out at the end of the play, instead of letting all of these kids take a bow for all of their hard work. The pastor's just like, yeah, that's cool that you did that. Now let me come out here and talk about Jesus as if that's not what you guys have been doing for 2 hours. Anyway, I haven't seen anybody point that out, but I feel like somebody should. I'm not gonna make you watch the whole thing. I haven't even been able to watch the whole thing because what he says, and I say this not out of malice, I just say this in honesty. What this guy says triggers my religious trauma.
He portrayed the life of one of our nation's founding fathers.
Who?
Alexander Hamilton.
Oh.
You know, we know that George Washington was, as one of his close friends.
Again, church doesn't want to be claiming Washington as he wasn't a good person.
The part of the play that captivated me as I was watching it is when Hamilton goes with Mrs. Reynolds.
The song that captivated you was the song that was cut off halfway through. Okay.
History tells us that people found out, and we saw in the play that his life went downhill after that.
So just to drive home the message, in case it wasn't already abundantly clear that I was not being hyperbolic when I said, they literally say Hamilton's sin caused all of the bad things, including the death of his child, to happen to him. The pastor comes out and reiterates this sentiment. And then he goes on to talk about King David.
You know, Hamilton's life is similar, so similar to this great man of God.
Another terrible person in the Bible. King David stalked a woman because he saw her bathing on a roof and was super creepy, and then sent her husband to war so that he would die. And then after he died, he forced her to marry him.
He also committed adultery.
I think it was a little more than adultery. I don't like the way we tell this story in the Bible. It shifts the blame off of King David. I don't know if anybody's gonna care about half of what I have to say in this video. I know I don't usually go this deep into serious topics like this. I hope this is still at least a fun video to watch. He then goes to another Christian talking point, which is that repent to God for your sins and your whole life slate's wiped clean. A fine message until he gets to this part.
The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked.
But also the Bible says the truth is written on my heart. Like when somebody makes this choice, that's totally fine, but it's one of those things where it's like, don't guilt somebody into joining your religion by saying everything that you want and all of your impulses are inherently wrong, you are wrong, you need to listen to me. Now I'm just not making jokes anymore. Now I'm just rattling off my grievances.
The life you now have is because of decisions you've done in the past.
Wow, just really going right for it. The life that you have right now is because of your own bad decisions. What? What if they have cancer? What if they lost their house because we're going through a pandemic and a recession?
I don't know what you did, but God does.
It's so sinister when they say it like that, isn't it?
Maybe you struggle with alcohol, with drugs, homosexuality, maybe you...
No, we're done. We're just done. You don't struggle with homosexuality. I want to be very clear here. I genuinely respect people from all different religions and the freedom that exists for us to believe whatever we want to believe. I'm truly not somebody who's just like, oh, Christians are weird. I don't believe that. Like, that's your faith. This is bigotry. This is not faith. Saying you're struggling with homosexuality. You happen to love somebody of the same gender. That's not a struggle. The Bible says literally all love comes from God because God is love. Bigotry is not different just because it's your bigotry. So yeah, I'm just gonna stop it right there because I'm already too mad and I gotta wrap this video up. It's been going on for far, far, far too long. Also, I would like to throw in the fact that, this is not funny, the church has given a statement, and I can't remember if it's a written statement or if it was something said at the pulpit, but basically they said, we don't regret anything that we did stealing this play, using it for our own agenda, because so many people got saved that night that we literally saved the lives of all of these people, and that's more important, okay? I wasn't there, but something tells me that people were not rushing the stage after this, and that's not just my own narrow-minded thinking. You have this moment where the pastor is just like begging people to come up and accept the Lord.
Just, you know, signify that by raising your hand. You want to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Just raise your hand where I can see you. And God wants to help you. Anybody here from front to back, side to side, you want to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, just raise your hand and say, Pastor, pray for me. I need God to come into my life. Anybody here?
And you can tell by his reaction that he is not being like rushed by a mosh pit of people just like enthusiastic to do that. He looks like a stand-up comedian struggling at a nightclub. Yeah, you see the traffic today? I mean, you didn't see the you don't drive a car. You've never been on the open. Okay, my whole routine is out the window. Like, it's that kind of energy. And hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 30 people or how many people you said got saved. That's cool. A lot of other people got hurt too. The criticism is not coming from the fact that these are Christians doing this or that people hate when people are Christians. The criticism comes from people are actually suffering. This was just not the way to do this. Hamilton has a lot of young fans and this was live streamed. People probably brought their friends who thought they were just gonna get to see a fun version of Hamilton that they've never gotten to see in person before. This is just depressing, you know? And let me just top off this video before I end here with this hot take. I hope they get sued, because this church obviously has quite a bit of money to be putting on a production of this caliber, and they plagiarized. Usually I would never ever be rooting for Disney in any legal battle, but it's a wild world we live in. No one should be above the law. This should be something where there's a repercussion for it. And again, this church had a stronger social media presence than any I had ever seen before, and now nothing. The whole page, their whole YouTube channel, everything, it's just wiped. The choice to steal and then lie has not only hurt other people and hurt their reputation with potential people who could join their church and their community, it's also hurting the people actively in their community. I know somebody was on part 4 of some like 18-part sermon series and it all got yoinked away from them. They probably had their Bible highlighters out. I don't know, man, it's too late and I've been talking for forever and I feel like I've said everything that can possibly be said. It just upsets me in so many different levels. When a pastor gets up and lies in front of the congregation, you have to just have a little bit of faith broken, you know? So yeah, I have no idea if this is gonna cut together into anything. I hope that this was still a fun watch. I know that I was a little bit more on a tangent than I usually, well, I'm always on a tangent, that's not new, but like, I hope that this is not like a downer. I hope you've been informed of the situation if you know about it or wanted to know more about it. I would love to hear your thoughts. I just really wanted to come at this the way that I come at everything and review it on its merit as best as I could. The discourse has been mainly just like, oh, let's point and laugh at how bad the singing is, which I feel like is missing the point completely. And I just wanted to talk about it in a space that didn't come off as mean or petty. I just wanted to share my honest thoughts like I always do. So I'm gonna wrap up the video here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing. Everything you do to support this channel means the world to me. If you're new here and you're a fan of nonsense, maybe consider sticking around because I post nonsense all the time. And remember, my name is Avery. I'm a YouTuber if you say so, because thanks to you guys, this is technically a YouTube channel. It is so late at night, I feel like I can't even say words anymore.